I begin by taking a roll call of council members to confirm that we have quorum present. When I state your name, if you would be so kind as to say present. Monica Engel.
Present.
Larry Cook.
Present.
Thank you. Aaron Flagg. Aaron is not.
Yes, Aaron's one again.
Oh, Aaron will be present. Okay.
Aaron, just say present.
Present.
You see that Amy has not joined us yet. Brian Higgins.
Present.
Thank you. Janet Langsam.
Present.
Thank you.
You.
Eric Lipsky.
Present.
Okay.
Mina Laura.
Present.
David Allen Miller.
Present.
Amy has not joined us yet. James Lemons.
Present.
Thank you. Peter Pockers. Present. Thank you. Monica Ramirez Montague.
Present.
Thank you. Adriana Trigiani.
Present.
Thank you. And Patrick Williams.
Present.
For the business of today's meeting, Councilmember Eric Latsky has been designated by the Executive Chamber to oversee the procedural elements. Eric, we have 13 members present and may proceed.
Thank you, Noah. As we have a quorum of council members present, I hereby call the March 27, 2025 meeting of the Council of the New York State Council on the Arts to order. To remind all in attendance, this is a public meeting that is being recorded. A recording and transcript of the meeting will be made available on the NYSCA website. At this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Erica Mallon, Executive Director of NYSCA.
Thank you so much, Eric, for leading us today. Welcome, everyone. Again, great to see you all. And thank you for joining us today. At today's meeting, our final for fiscal year 2025, Council review and vote on the FY 2025 capital project grant recommendations, the FY 2025 capital panelist roster, the FY 2025 re-grant administrative funds, and the FY 2025 appeals panel determinations. The materials for today's meeting were sent to Council on March 20th, 2025. A little bit about capital funding. We are immensely grateful to the Governor Hochul and the New York State Legislature for their FY 2025 capital appropriation of $80 million. The demand for capital funding is high. NYSCA received over 260 applications representing over $200 million in total request amounts. Many arts organizations, particularly small organizations, and organizations outside of New York City do not have access to these critical dollars outside of our own state funding. Supporting capital projects ensures the longevity of our vital cultural institutions, creates jobs, establishes new tourism destinations, and has a compounded economic effect on local businesses and the overall health of our communities across the state. By being proactive in our field, just this year alone, we have made innovative changes to expand access to capital improvement grants to address everyday but critically needed facilities improvements to keep doors open. And I'm proud to share some recently completed projects, including the Corning Museum of Glass, the Reg Lene Center for the Arts in Western New York, the Bushwick Star in Brooklyn, and historic Saranac Lake in North Country. For the record, the 2025 Capital Project Fund application portal launched on September 25th, 2024, and closed on January 14th, 2025. I'd like to recognize the phenomenal work of our capital projects team, Program Director Katie Sager, Program Officer Lindsay Turley, for their oversight and stewardship of this program, and our operations team led by Karen Welch, including Will McDermott, Gabby Nail, Martin Lee, and Ian Byrne, for their work throughout the application and panel review process. And I'd also like to thank the FY 2025 capital panelists who represented 7 out of 10 regions of the state for their time and commitment to the most important part of our grant-making process. Pause for a second. Okay. So an update from our last meeting. I delivered budget testimony before the legislative fiscal committees in February. I was proud to speak on the excellent work of our agency over the last year, the impact of a well-funded arts ecosystem, and how our work ensures the following: that organizations of all budget sizes thrive. Half of our 2025 grantees have budgets under 500,000 and 84% under $1 million. That support is broad and inclusive. Annually, NYSCA supports over 500 new artists across artistic disciplines. And in 2025, and this number is very significant to us, over 100 organizations were first-time NYSCA grantees. That we are investing in our local communities. Our successful statewide community re-grant program that's been going on for 40 years expands NYSCA's reach, promotes local decision-making, and empowers over 1,300 hyperlocal artists and organizations. That we are helping to develop new artistic work. NYSCA invested $2 million to secure affordable creative spaces across 61 sites, ensuring that artists have space to create and innovate. And that we are doing outreach to expand access to our capital dollars. This year alone, our technical assistance webinars and office hours reached almost 6,000 people. And that the arts remain an economic powerhouse and deliver a robust return, contributing over $151 billion back to New York State, more than retail, construction, agriculture, or transportation sectors. We are grateful for the proposed increases to our grant making by the governor and legislature, and we will inform council when the final budget is delivered. So at this time, I welcome Deputy Director of Programs, Nika White, for our next few items of business.
Thank you, Erica. For our first order of business, we will review the FY 2025 Appeals Panel determinations. The appeals memo can be found on pages 2 to 3 in the packet on your iPad. As part of NYSCA's 4-step approval process, an applicant may appeal the council's funding decision. The procedure for appeals is set forth in Part 6401 of the New York Codes, Rules, and Regulations. Valid grounds for appeal are limited to non-presentation of information, information known to the council staff prior to the council's decision that was not presented and that might have altered the decision, misrepresentation of information, information known to the council staff prior to the council's decision that was changed in its presentation and that, if presented differently, might have altered the decision, or improper procedure, contention by the applicant that the review of the funding request by the appropriate advisory panel was biased, or that the decision of the council was arbitrary and capricious. Of the 2,700 FY 2025 applications, NYSCA received 11 funding determination appeals. The appeals panel, comprised of panelists that served on the FY 2025 panels, held a public meeting at NYSCA's offices on Thursday, March 6, 2025. After presentation of the grounds, review of the procedure materials, and an extensive discussion, 9 appeals were denied and 2 appeals were upheld. It is important to note that a denied appeal does not affect an organization's application for the following year. Appellants are welcome to submit a request to NYSCA in the subsequent year without penalty. In the event that an appeal is upheld, it is not a guarantee of funding. Upheld appeals go back to the panel to be reviewed again as if it were a new request. Each of you has received a copy of a memo that shared the information from the appeals outlining the appellants, their grounds for appeal, and the results. The council must vote today to concur with the appeals panel's recommendations on the appeals denials for the FY 2025 appeal process to be concluded. The council will vote on the upheld appeals at our November council meeting after they have gone through the FY 2026 panel review process. Are there any questions from the council regarding these appeals? Yes, ma'am.
Just if you can clarify how organizations, in addition to requesting an appeal or making an appeal, how they make their case to the panel put together to hear those appeals?
So as you may know, each applicant is encouraged to get their panel comments after the final council meeting. So along with, hearing about whether or not they were funded, they get to hear the reaction from the panel comments. They may use those comments to create a case of, why they feel that their lack of funding may have fit into one of the 3 grounds.
So they're not told which ground upon which they were denied, misrepresentation or
They actually choose the grounds from the statute to make their
they choose it from the
they
statute.
choose it themselves.
And then lastly, they submit it written
Yes.
Okay.
So the appeals panel actually looks at that letter, along with the panel comments, and they do have the application to look at as well. They do not substitute their own aesthetic judgment for the original panel, they just look for evidence, within that application and the, commentary to either uphold or deny the appeal.
How are the panelists chosen for the appeals panel?
We really just try to look at panelists who did not actually deliberate upon those original applications and are available to participate. That's pretty much it.
Could you just share again, Megan, what is the misrepresentation or non-presentation? What is non-presentation?
Non-presentation was information known to council staff prior to the council's decision that was not presented and that might have altered the decision.
And misrepresentation?
Oh, and then misrepresentation of information is information known to the council staff prior to the council's decision that was changed in its presentation and that if presented differently might have altered the decision. Any other questions? For our next order of business, we'll move to the FY 2025 capital panelist roster, which can be found on pages 4 to 6 of your meeting packet. Capital projects applications are complex collections of information about the technical feasibility, financial soundness, and direct community benefit of proposed capital improvements. To adequately evaluate these proposals, we rely heavily on the technical and field expertise of a diverse group of practitioners. Each panel is comprised of 5 to 7 individuals with expertise in architecture, engineering, nonprofit finance, nonprofit management with experience leading a capital project, technical production and theatrical equipment, historical preservation, and construction management. Their collective complementary skill sets foster a rigorous and thoughtful review of every application we receive. This year, we engaged 40 panelists, 18 new and 22 returning, representing 7 regions of the state, and 6 separate review panels of 5 to 8 reviewers. Panelists reviewed and scored applications in advance, and each of the panels convened for a Zoom meeting. During the meetings, applications were discussed in detail, and panelists had the opportunity to adjust their scores based on the conversation. Panel scores and comments were used to inform the list of recommendations that council is considering today. A reminder that we will vote to ratify the panelist rosters following our review of the FY25 capital grant recommendations. Are there any questions or comments from the council at this time?
Is there any, I noticed there are a couple of folks on the panel who are from the same organization. Is there a limit to how many people may be from the same organization on any given year?
I will just say, I'll turn it over to Katie, but I will just say there may be different people from the same organization. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all eligible to or able to serve, but I'll turn it over to Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So a couple of things. Everybody that's on that very long list doesn't necessarily serve in a given year. So you may have somebody that did it last year and then couldn't serve this year and so says, well, we'll recommend so-and-so from our organization we also think is great and might fit for XYZ reason. It's also possible that we'll have 2 people from the same organization that they serve on different panels. It's especially true of architecture firms or engineering firms, which are sometimes very difficult for us to get enough folks from. So you may see some people from the same architecture firm or other technical firms on there.
And then how long are people in the pool, I guess?
3 years, and then they have to take at least 1 year off. We do try to keep a mix of folks that have served before and then new people that come in. It's sort of like a training mentorship environment, It's great to not have all new people on one panel because people kind of give them a sense of how, how to work through it, but also it's good to have, fresh voices in the room as well.
Great, thank you.
And if you look at the, in your packet to the far right, it indicates what year of service that particular individual is on, for the. Any other questions? Okay, we'll turn this back over to Eric.
Thank you, Megan. At this time, NYSCA has determined that council has a basis to enter into executive session to review the NYSCA 2025 Capital Project Fund grant recommendations and the FY 2025 re-grant and services administrative funding. Section 105(1)(f) of the Open Meetings Law permits a public body to enter into executive session to discuss the financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation. We will return to public meeting at the conclusion of the presentation by NYSCA staff at approximately 4:30 p.m. To our council members, please raise your hand now to approve entry into executive session, and I will ask Noah to confirm hands.
Yes, confirming that the motion is approved.
At this time, pursuant to section 103A of the Open Meetings Law, members of the general public must leave the meeting as the NYSCA Council has voted to enter into executive session in accordance with section 105(1)(f). Following the conclusion of the executive session at approximately 4:30 p.m., you will be able to rejoin today's meeting in public session.
Okay, I am confirming that the recording of the public portion of this meeting has resumed and that you may proceed.
Thank you. Welcome back to the public portion of the council meeting for the New York State Council on the Arts. I am Council Member Eric Latsky. Thank you all for joining us. To remind all in attendance, this is a public meeting that is being recorded. At this time, I would like to ask Council for a motion to ratify the FY 2025 panelist rosters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of ratifying the FY 2025 panelist roster recommendations, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. At this time, I would like to ask Council for a motion to vote on the FY 2025 capital project grant recommendations, the FY 2025 re-grants and services administrative funds, and the FY 2025 appeals panel determinations. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. I would now like to ask Noah Brick, General Counsel and Ethics Officer, if there are any recusals to report. Those with a conflict will be deemed recused on their vote for the applicable application across each of our several votes.
Thank you, Eric. As a reminder, our Code of Ethics requires council members to make timely disclosure of any affiliation with proposed NYSCA grantees from which an actual conflict of interest or appearance thereof may arise. I will now read into the record all council member refusals that have been reported for the grants on which you are voting today. The Bethany Arts Community, Peter Pockris. Earlville Opera House, Janet Langston. Historic Hudson Valley, Peter Pockris. The Huntington Arts Council, Janet Langston. The Juilliard School, Aaron Flagg. The New York Shakespeare Festival, doing business as the Public Theater, Patrick William. And the Roxbury Arts Group, also Janet Langston.
Thank you, Noah. Are there any other recusals that council would like to report at this time?
Yes.
I have an affiliation with the Art of My Pavilions,
The which?
Art of My Pavilions in Chatham.
Okay. Thank you for your refusal. Any other affiliations that you see on the list that I did not read out? Okay.
All those in favor of approving the 2025 capital project grant recommendations, the FY 2025 re-grants and services administrative funds, and the FY 2025 appeals panel determinations, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? What,
Recuse, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, abstentions.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, the motion carries. And I now turn this meeting back over to Erica.
All right, well, thank you all. Thank you, Eric, so much for leading us and overseeing the procedural elements of this meeting. Today, all of you, the NYSCA Council, have approved over $80 million in vital capital funding, bringing our FY 2025 funding to $162 million across 10 regions and 62 counties. We thank Governor Hochul and our state legislatures who continue to advocate for the arts and culture sector who make this funding possible. In doing our civic duty, all of us ensure that these public dollars have lasting impact in communities across our state. These funds not only bolster our economy, but they will also strengthen the arts and culture sector and serve all New Yorkers and visitors alike. The FY 2026 council meeting schedule will be finalized over the coming weeks, and we anticipate the pending meetings in November 2025 and March 2026. I will turn the meeting over one last time to Eric.
Thank you, Erica. I now ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting of the NYSCA Council. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. This meeting of the NYSCA Council is adjourned.
Yeah.